What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards Live, episode 4 today, where we're going to talk fantasy football and wrestling cards. That makes absolutely zero sense. Why would I want to talk about that? Well, there's actually more parallels than you think. And if you're watching this, whether you're watching it live, shout out to everybody watching live. If you're watching in the archives, it doesn't matter whether you're a football fan or not. I just want to explain kind of parallels between two passions of mine. So thanks for everybody for stopping by today. Again, whether you're watching live or on the archives, you're watching live, drop a comment if you got any questions or anything you want to talk about, drop it in. So before I get into the topic today, I want to touch on the last live that I did, episode 3, where we just covered some PSA returns and stuff like that. And I had some audio problems and video problems. The video was out of sync and the audio was like cracking. And I wasn't notified about this until after the stream. So if you're watching this live and my mic starts cutting out or there's video problems, whatever, just drop it in the comment. Let me know so I can try to make some adjustments. I did make some adjustments on my end, but after doing some research, I found out that a lot of people using StreamYard were having issues with the mic cracking or audio and video not being in sync. So anyway, if there's any issues on the stream, drop it in the comments. So let's start by talking about the Wrestling with Cards Fantasy Football League. And I put this together last year, and actually I put it together 2 years ago. And it was just I think it was 2 years ago. I lost track of time. But it was just a kind of a fun way for me to continue playing fantasy football. I mean, I was playing in other leagues anyway. But I was like, hey, there's other wrestling card collectors out there that are diehard football fans. And maybe they don't go on social media or go within the wrestling card circle and talk about fantasy football or their just love of football in general. But I know they're out there. So I was like, hey, let's get a bunch of these like-minded people together and have a fun league. But instead of doing the traditional, buy in with cash or, buy in with cash to then buy a championship belt, which is a good idea, or a trophy or whatever, let's do wrestling cards. So what we did is we got a group of people together, and the entry fee is a $20 to $30-ish wrestling card or cards, like whatever you could put together. And so that's the player pool. The prize pool. And we're going to go over this year's prize pool today. So everybody donated a card to get into the league. I will say that everybody did send a card in. That being said, I don't know what happened with one of them. I had everybody marked down as paid, but yet I could only find 12 that I know were sent in. So just, it's my fault, I guess, possibly for not keeping better track or whatever. But I just threw in my own card. So we're going to start in with that. So one of the prizes that will be available is this Topps Chrome 2021 Topps Chrome Orange Austin Theory, numbered to 25. So that is available for the prize pool. And I also should say that third place, we pay out the top 3. Third place gets a pick of a card that's left. Second place gets the last 2 cards that are left. And then first place gets to pick, I guess it'll be 11. I think there's 12 teams in the league. So they would get to pick 9 cards of their choosing, and then whatever was left would go to second and then third. So that's kind of how the payouts go. So here is a indie card, Cherry Bomb. So this is the bunny from AEW. This is her first card, and this one is, to my knowledge, rarely seen. So to have something like this being thrown in for a fantasy football prize pool is pretty good if you ask me. We're going to go old school here. Let me get these out of the package for you, because some of these, like I said, are multiple cards bundled together, so it might take me a minute. So this is one of the Fleer relics, which there was a recent show on WTC TV talking all about Championship Clash, and I would recommend going back on the WTC YouTube page and listen. Great conversation about relic cards. But here is one of the relics from the corporation, and it doesn't say, it says X-Pac. So this is the X-Pac event worn. And here's a relic from Fleer Royal Rumble Funaki. So both of these cards were actually sent in from Chef Carl. If you're unfamiliar with Chef Carl, he was, I'll say, one of the OGs in the wrestling card space. Me and Tony had him on a Worlds Collide roundtable, and there were all kinds of plans to get him more involved within content and some other things that he was planning on doing, different stories that he was going to tell with cards. And unfortunately, he passed away not too long after sending this card in, so we had to get somebody to take over his team. But I did kind of make it a rule that just to kind of honor him, per se, we're going to keep this in the league, these 2 cards in the league for the foreseeable future. So whoever wins it can use that as their entry fee to the next year and just kind of keep it going that way. So moving on, I think this is 2 that were available last year. We've got a 2000, is it 4? I think it's 14. 2014, 2020 Top Chrome Undertaker refractors. So that's one of the entry fees going into that. Next, we've got 2 of the Rock cards. That's one of the prizes that you can win. Next up is a 9.5 CSG Briscoes. A lot of people might not like this because the Rebel flag, but it is what it is. Briscoes Indy card, high grade. Gotta love that. Mr. Anderson Impact Auto. That will be one of the prizes. This one is numbered to 99. Let's see. There is 2 cards in here. Again, some people sent in multiple cards to kind of make up the value between the 20 and the 30. So we have a blue number to 149, Santos Escobar out of the NXT set from 2022. And we have a Prism Auto from Shinsuke Nakamura. So that will be one of the prizes. This next one's got like 4 cards. So I guess we could do this flip style. So we have an Omos Blue Wave. Got a Johnny Gargano Green Chrome Auto. Alexa Bliss Women's Division Relic. And a Wolfgang Select Auto. So all of that is one prize. That's a pretty good one. Next up, again, a lot in here. And one of these is the custom card. So get ready for this. This one rules. All right, Tiffany Stratton, Rookies and Stars from Chronicles. Solo Sikoa, Rookie Prism. Katana Chance Auto from Select. And then here is the custom Rock. Thick card, got a nice shine to it. It's a 1 of 1. The most electrifying. It's got that cool auto at the bottom from the artist. And the Brahma Bull. So all of that will be one of the prizes. Got a couple more here. This one's just a single card, so we'll do this. This is the Cubic out of 49 Shotzi Auto from Revolution. And then lastly, let's see, what year is this? I can't ever remember the year on these. Is it 19? No, it's 16. 16 Undisputed out of 25 Shawn Michaels. Blue. Green Parallel main features Brody Lee. And an LA Knight from the UK Topps release. So that's all the prizes available. So again, first place gets to pick 9 of those. Second place will get to pick 2, and then third place kind of gets the last one. So it's a fun league. You know, everybody that's been in it, everybody's pretty hardcore players, but there's not a lot of communication going on. Not a lot of trash talk. We just get in there and we play. We want to win those wrestling cards. That's what it's all about. So if you're interested in joining the league in the future, I do have a waiting list. There's a couple people on it right now. So if somebody next year drops and you're interested in joining, I can put you on that list. You can let me know in the chat if you're interested. I'll put you on there. You can reach out to me on social media. Links in the show notes to all of that stuff if you need to get a hold of me on social media. And let me know if you're interested in joining the league. Speaking of that, I also am toying around with the idea, and we'll talk about DFS in a minute, but daily fantasy sports, for those of you who don't know, it's basically one-day fantasy, and it's all for money. So I was kind of kicking around the idea of doing a daily fantasy group for Wrestling with Cards so people can kind of drop in and drop out on a Monday night football game, on a Thursday night football game. It's a weekend slate if they want to play a classic game. All different ways to play. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. It's just something I kind of thought of while I was kind of prepping for today's show. So if you're interested in joining the Daily Fantasy League, let me know and I can get that started. We can play games for as little as like $1. Like that it's still a lot of fun just to get in and play. It's not always about the money to me. But let's talk about the main event, so to speak, and that's the parallels between wrestling cards and fantasy football. On the surface, a lot of people watching this stream, maybe, or a lot of people watching my channel, they don't care about football. Again, they just want to hear about wrestling cards. But as I was playing in my daily leagues, specifically this past weekend, I started kind of thinking about some parallels for different ways that I actually am seeing myself as a hardcore fantasy player. I'm actually doing those same things in wrestling cards, and it's been very helpful. Take 1 second before we get into that. Shout out Mike Summer. Mike, we're gonna have to get you on the live stream. I got a lot of stuff I want to ask you about. You like Chuckster. I try to get you on once a year, so we're gonna have to schedule that. He'd be interested in the DFS league, so if one person's interested, maybe we can keep that going. Shout out to Mike. Definitely check out the Wax Pack Hero podcast that Mike does. It's great content, and you can watch him on the archives of this channel if you want to know more about him and what he's collecting. So kind of jumping into the parallels. Let's start with the draft. Okay, so you go into your fantasy league and you're wanting your curation. It's all about curating with the draft. You want to go, maybe it's a zero running back strategy. Maybe you want the top quarterback, the top tight end. I don't know why, but maybe you'd want the best defense. Like there's all different kinds of strategies within fantasy football. And we're not going to get deep into that because nobody cares about people's fantasy teams. That's not what we're here to talk about anyway. It's all about kind of the parallels between the two. So when you go into the draft, you're doing your research, you're doing curation over who you want on your team. So that's kind of what we're doing with collecting. And I say wrestling cards because that's primarily what we're doing here. But this also could go into anything else you want. You know, if you collect action figures, if you collect sports cards, if you collect memorabilia, it doesn't matter. The parallels are the same. When you're getting into these collections, you're curating. Number one, you're trying to build something that you want for yourself, or something that brings back those memories of childhood or nostalgia or whatever it is. That's what you're doing with fantasy football. You're trying to get the best team possible based on the way that you want to approach the game. Is it a PPR league? Is it touchdown only? Is it standard? Well, you know, look at cards the same way. Are you big into the 80s? Is there maybe it's 87 tops and that's got a special place for you? Like based on memories or nostalgia or whatever. So that's what you gravitate to. That's what you want to focus on. Maybe it's the more modern stuff, gold parallels, prism blacks. Maybe it's like a subset, like 5-Timers Club from WWE Topps Chrome. And that's kind of what you want to focus in on and curate. That's the way you want to collect. That's kind of, you know, drafting and beginning your journey on a collection, whether that's a new PC, a new super collection, or you're just getting into the hobby. Like no matter what that is, there's those two correlations. So again, you're getting into collecting, you're doing the research, you're trying to curate because it's what you want. And that's the same what we're doing with draft. Again, so moving on to the next thing, and that's managing your roster. So you drafted your fantasy team, whether it's, well, we'll mainly skew towards the yearly fantasy and not DFS in this point. Here's a question from Caleb. Shout out to Caleb, who is in the fantasy league and sent in one of the cards. Way more dumb luck in fantasy than wrestling cards for myself. That goes both ways, actually. I will agree with Caleb for sure on this one. There is so much, you can look at statistics all day, and sometimes it just doesn't break your way. More often than not, it does, but there's so much luck involved with any kind of fantasy sports that he is right. That being said, I've actually purchased a lot of cards that, you know, I liked at the time, like it fit my PC. This is what I was going to go after. But the next thing I know, I wasn't as interested in it, or I wanted to take that and shift it into the carrying cross stuff or the all-star stuff or whatever it is. So, you know, I found dumb luck on the card side, actually, you know, finding something you paid $20 for. And the next thing you know, like the market value on that's like $100, $200. Like, talk about a big win there too. So thanks, Caleb, for joining the league, playing with us, and thanks for the comment. So once you get your yearly team drafted, right, it's all about kind of managing the team throughout the year. You're adding players, you're dropping players, you're trying to make trades. That's what we're doing in the hobby. So you've got your collection established, you got started, you know, no matter if you're set collecting, super collecting, whatever it is, you've got kind of that baseline established for what you want to do. So what are you trying to do next? Well, you're obviously trying to add to that collection, which, you know, you're trying to look for those players on your fantasy team. You're looking to drop players. A lot of people don't want to talk about this, but it's okay to let cards go. I think there's this, I'm not sure what a misconception we'll say, that to be a true collector or a hardcore collector or whatever it is, you don't sell anything. And that's just not the case. There are times that come up where, you know, you've got to let stuff go. Or maybe, again, like I said, you just lose general interest in a specific talent, a specific set, or whatever it is, and you're ready to move that into the next thing. That would be the dropping section. So you drop players on your fantasy team that get hurt or you no longer want on your team because they're not producing. Maybe it's a bad investment card again, or maybe you just lost interest. That's what we're doing in the hobby is we're dropping these cards, selling the cards. Essentially, you're not just going to get rid of them per se. I doubt some of you may, but and then the other thing is like trading. So you're like one of the big things, especially in dynasty leagues, dynasty fantasy football, where that's like as close as you can get to running an actual NFL team. Like fantasy wise, because your team transfers every year. You have a rookie draft. You have draft picks. Some leagues go into like salary cap stuff. So, and involved in all that, one of the most fun things that you can do is trade. So that's what we're doing with the hobby too. We're trading cards. We're leveling up. We're trading down. We're trading into other things that we're interested in. Anything to, better your core or your team. That's what we're doing. Stealing it from Brett McGrath, Stacking Slabs. Make sure to go check out his podcast. I think he's trademarked this at this point, and I've used it numerous times that he's talked about. You're the CEO of your PC. You're also the CEO of your fantasy football team. So again, you're checking the news. What's taking this into football? What's injury updates? Who's cut from the rosters? Who's not getting as many snaps? Who's not seeing the field as much? Who may be on the trading block? Same thing with the hobby. What's the latest release? What's a market on this guy looking for? What is the market on the latest set that's come out? What's the market on sealed wax from 5 years ago? All of these things kind of parallel in that you're just trying to better your team or your collection by being the CEO and kind of, going through and seeing what doesn't fit, what fits, what do I like, what do I don't like. So moving on from that, take 1 second. Again, if you have any questions or comments in the chat, drop it. Or if you're watching this in the archives and you have a comment, leave it below. I'd appreciate it. So got your team established. You're working on your fantasy team. Next comes competition. And this one is interesting. A lot of people don't like to talk about the hobby being a competition. And I would say for most, it's not. For some, it's a friendly competition. So for me, with the carrying cross stuff, I want to say that I have the world's biggest and best carrying cross card collection. It's just kind of a fun thing, right? If somebody comes out of the woodwork and all of a sudden, I don't think this is possible actually based on what I have. But if they came out and they had a bigger and better carrying cross collection than I did, cool, no problem. Like that's awesome to see. I'm not sitting here trying to compete with this other person to say that I've got the biggest and best collection. If I do, cool. Like that's just a fun thing to do. It's fun to be able to experience Prism Blacks, Prism Golds, Topps Chrome Superfractors, Topps Transcendent. These like upper echelon things that we see with these other wrestling talents. It's fun to see that in a talent this much affordable price. So, something like the Rock Prism Black 1 of 1, we saw what that sold for. For the Karrion Kross Prism Black, I'm paying a fraction of the price. So I'm getting to experience that same type of product and different kinds of sets for a much cheaper price. And it's just something fun to do. So before we continue talking about the collection, Wrestling Card Guy, shout out to Aaron. Thanks for stopping by. Glad you could finally make one of these live streams. So again, going back to the competition, one thing that people will look to a lot is set registries within the hobby. And I think that's a really fun thing. Like PSA really is kind of, they kind of really taken a hold. Like a lot of these other grading companies have set registries. I know CSG is doing a lot better at that. And there's some people like Caleb, maybe if you're watching this, you can comment more on this. I know their set registry, especially for indie cards, is getting a lot of buzz and a lot of people are going to start going for that, which I think is great. But set registry is a way for people to compete within the hobby, so to speak, if you want to call it a competition. Super collectors. This goes back to what I mentioned before. Like, it's fun to say that I have the best Karrion Kross, or that somebody out there like Adam Gelman, maybe he's got the biggest Becky Lynch collection, maybe not. But it's fun to kind of, compete with others, but I'll call it a friendly competition because I see him go back and forth with, I think, WWE Prism Collector and some other people that collect Becky Lynch. And it's always just kind of a fun back and forth thing. There's not a lot of hate or shade being thrown at people for, I've got a better collection than you. No, mine's better because I have the 1 of 1s. Well, I've got all the gold, blah, blah, whatever. Again, competition is fun, but it doesn't have to be so serious. And the last part of the kind of competition aspect, I think, is kind of competing with yourself. So what is it that you can do to better your collection? And maybe it's like, okay, you set a goal. So the goal is competition within your own mind. I'm going to complete this set. I'm going to upgrade my set registry. So maybe you are competing with other people on the set registry, but it's also more of a competition with yourself. Like how good can your collection get from a set perspective? How good can these grades get? We got a couple of comments here. Kayla, actually, let me go back here. Wrestling card guy. I'm thinking of getting a membership for CGC. Maybe get an all-in set. Hey, that's a good call right there. And the GCW PBR set graded. Yeah, great idea. And that's what I'm talking about. Like CGC is going to take the market share for these indie cards. And I think Beckett grades some of this stuff, but PSA is losing a lot of, like, not that they need it, but they're losing a lot of customers because they're not going to grade these indie cards for numerous reasons. Even though WrestlingTradingCards.com has got everything listed right there for PSA to reference, they still don't want it. Shattered Soul 14, what's up? Thanks for joining. Wrestling card guy, fleets and friendly competition with cable. Hey, yeah. And hey, I got an idea. How about if you guys decide to go at it on the set registry? I'd like to get both of you guys on this live stream and we can kind of chat about your experience with CGC, because we've not had a lot of people talk about that. Talk about set registry, talk about the indie cards and kind of the, like I think I've got some Karrion Kross indie cards because that's what I collect, but and I've got the all-in set, but there are some indie cards that I think are cool. Like, I got the GCW Zandig auto because I'm like a Combat Zone Wrestling Day One guy from like the late '90s, and I've just always loved Zandig. So when I saw that, I had to have it. But I think the indie cards just don't get a lot of respect because they don't get the headlines. And even though it's not something I'm really collecting, I do respect it because a lot of people. I said it on the Wrestling Card Market Watch from last month that people are starting to open their wallets and pay up for these indie cards. People want them, people collect them, and there's so many people in the hobby that just don't. Oh, it's not a Prism Gold. It's not put out by Panini or Upper Deck. It's not collectible. They just don't get it. And secretly, Caleb and Aaron, you guys are like, rips, and there's more, but everybody's going after these collections that they want, regardless of what anybody else thinks. And I just think it's great. So, shout out, go Bills. Absolutely. Bills. I had to wear the hat today since I was talking about football. So shout out. Thanks for stopping by. Go Bills. Looked a little bit better last week. Not Fleet. Not sure. Mike Summers, CGC told me at the National that they would grade the wrestling card. That's huge news. Are you watching this and you made an appearance in the wrestling card collector set? You can now get your face behind a piece of plastic by CSG. So I think that is awesome. Mike, thanks for sharing that. Aaron's back, wrestling card guy. I love CGC. Caleb is definitely the guy to talk to, though. I think both of you guys can come on the show. If you guys both want to, just let me know down the road. We'll schedule something. Get out here and come to the Bills game. Hey, one of these days. I actually, because I'm in Missouri and my wife is a Chiefs fan, which, don't get me started, I hate the Chiefs more than any other team in the NFL. And you know what? Just side note on that, it's because I'm surrounded by Chiefs fans that are like fair weather Chiefs fans. I know more about the Chiefs roster than a lot of these Chiefs fans that I'm surrounded by. And again, a lot of that comes back to fantasy football and like knowing the depth chart and doing the research and whatnot. But I think that's just why I have a disdain for them. But I was actually planning on going to the Bills game in Kansas City this year, but I just can't stand being in Arrowhead. I don't want to be around those tools. So one of these days I am going to get up to Buffalo and go to one of those fun games. I'm not jumping through any tables, though. Way too calm for that. Aaron gives me a thumbs up. We'll get you on. So thanks for the comments. If you guys got comments, questions, anything, drop them in the chat as we're continuing through this. I finished off with the competition, just kind of competing with yourself. This next thing is going to be really hard for some people to kind of get over from the collecting aspect. And it's tough from fantasy perspective too. And that is winning or losing, we continue. And what I mean by that is in fantasy, you can take kind of two approaches. Either, you wait all week, you're doing the research, you're looking up the stats, you're putting in the work, and then your team loses. And this could be from a yearly perspective of the team you drafted, or it could be daily fantasy perspective. And maybe you just lost a lot of money doing that. Or maybe you won a lot of money. Either way, we continue forward, win or lose. And that's what we're doing with our collections. Hypothetically, you invested or prospected on somebody and it didn't work out. Win or lose, you move on. Sell it for what you can get and move on. Or you can do like what I did, and I was trying to prospect on Karrion Kross. That turns into like one of my most fun collections in the hobby that I've done. So, you know, if you're losing on an investment, just get rid of it. Move on to the next thing. If you did buy something that, let's just say it's Wrestling All Stars, a lot of people would say that that's a pretty good investment, so to speak. But let's say that all of a sudden you don't have any interest in that. You picked a modern guy, and that's what, or gal, and that's what you want to super collect now. So all of a sudden you decide to move those Wrestling All Stars cards for whatever it is you collect. And maybe whatever it is you're wanting to collect isn't worth as much. Who cares? Like, take all of that out of the equation, get rid of what you don't want, move on. Again, win, lose, or I guess draw in some stances. Just take what you can get and move on. And it's harder for some people to see that, especially with like, if they bought something, so many people want to get what they paid out of it, which makes sense, right? But from like, I can just tell you that there are a lot of Karrion Kross and Wrestling All Stars cards, because that's kind of my main two PCs, that I would not have been able to get if I didn't make a bundle sale or a bundle trade or something that maybe I did take a loss on, but it freed up something to allow me to build out those collections even more. And again, that's kind of with daily fantasy and win, lose, or draw with the hobby, there's always another day. So with last night, Browns and Steelers game was pretty terrible. And it didn't start off well for me. We don't need to go into details on that, but I did end up, cashing. So I didn't lose any money, but I was disappointed with kind of, my thought process was right on the players that I thought were going to go. It just didn't work out, and that's fine. And that's what happens with the hobby. There's always another day. So, you lose out on a card. This is really common with auctions. I can't tell you, I am cursed from White Sparkle, Prism, Karrion Kross. I've missed out on 4 auctions of these. A couple of times there was some weird shady stuff going on because they were like, I've noticed a lot of the Kross, and leave a comment if you have any more insight on this. A lot of the Prism WWE auctions that are coming out of China, which I don't mind buying from, but there's like been some shill bidding going on. Like one of these cards went for like well over $100 and then was immediately relisted. A lot of weird stuff going on. So there's a couple of the White Sparkle Prism Kross cards that I've missed out on for that. But then I've also missed out on them because it's just my own fault. Like I set an alarm and then forgot about the alarm, or didn't set it for the right time. Or maybe I had the tab open and I just got busy multitasking, doing something else, had some eBay orders come in, or, had a phone call, whatever it is. And the next thing I know, I missed the auction. And it's like something I would have paid 3-4 times the price that it ended at, But guess what? I could cry about it. Oh, it's not in my collection. What am I going to do? Move on to the next day. Win, lose, or draw, we're moving on in the hobby. We're moving on in fantasy. And lastly, actually, something else I want to talk about with that is like mail days. And this is something that probably a lot of you can relate to. The best part for a lot of people winning an auction is that mail day and the anticipation for that to come in the mail so you can finally get it. And then once you do get it, it's like, all right, on to the next thing. Same thing with daily fantasy, same thing with the hobby. It just continues. It's always on to the next thing. And I think it's good to go back and kind of look at where you came from, and from a daily perspective or a regular fantasy season-long draft, look at where you went wrong, look at where you went right. Don't dwell too much on that, and then move on to the next. Take what you can learn and move on to the next thing. Same thing with the hobby. Like if it's a mail day, admire it, check it out, post it on social media. And then, when you put it in your box or your binder or slab or whatever it is, periodically go back and look at that for a couple different reasons. Like ask yourself, does that still belong in your PC? Are you still appreciating it? Is it something that still brings you that nostalgia or that feeling or connection or meaning or whatever it is? And if so, then that's cool. And you remember the mail day, you remember why you bought it. But also on these kind of old mail days, if you're going back and you're looking at it and it's not really what you want anymore, again, win, lose, or draw, maybe you want to move that into something, the next thing, the next piece of your PC. So mail days are kind of an interesting thing, because I know a lot of people I've talked to are like, oh, the most exciting part of getting this Grail card was waiting for it to come in the mail. And then once I got it, I put it in my box, put it with my collection. And the next thing I know, I was off to the next saved eBay search. So Losing. I talked about losing auctions. Maybe there was a buy it now, and it had a best offer, and maybe you sent in the offer for $10 less than what it was listed at, and you're like, oh, this is the latest comp. This is what it should go for. But then 5 minutes later, you see, that item's not it's no longer available. It's gone. Somebody came in, hit that bin, and now you're kind of. Some people are living with regret because they didn't get that card, but just move on. If it's a one of one, sucks, but you got to move on. Just win, lose, draw, move on. Lastly, winning championships. So obviously with fantasy football, we're looking to win. That's the whole reason we play, whether it's the money, whether it's the prestige, whether it's that Ryan Leaf championship belt. That was actually a fantasy football dynasty league championship belt, and the league disbanded, and I just happened to win it the last year, so I got to keep the belt. That is not a wrestling card, not a wrestling figure, but something that connects me back to my fun times with the league, fun times with fantasy football, but kind of translating that into cards. That's what it's all about. Like going back to the Chef Carl cards that we have in here, these relics, that's going to stay in this league for as long as we have the league. And every time I look at it, I'm going to remember starting this league. I'm going to remember Chef Carl trying to get into the league and all these things that he had. So obviously we want to, win the championships, money, the cards, whatever it is. Maybe it is, but there's other things. Like, what if you're trying to complete for me, the Wrestling All-Star signed set? That's I'm going to call it an impossible achievement, but I'm going to continue working at it because there are certain cards in there that are kind of set busters, meaning that there's maybe just a few of them out there, and the few people that have them aren't going to break up their sets to be able to sell that to you, even at absorbent prices. So, putting together a set can be winning the championship. Putting together a rainbow, I see tons of people doing this. Maybe it's putting together a subset, 5-timers club in a specific color. Maybe you want to do like a prism insert set in a specific parallel. Getting to that goal and finishing that is winning the championship. Now, again, though, going back to the previous thing, you complete the grail, you get that grail card. That's another thing. Maybe you've been wheeling and dealing and making all kinds of deals to try to get this big card. If you want to go back in the archives of this channel, I spoke with Travis Fowler and how he had a kind of epiphany of, I want an 82 Hogan. So what do I do to get the 82 Hogan? You start making moves. You start selling, trading, buying, whatever it is, making all these moves to get that grail. That's what we're doing with fantasy. That's what we're doing in our collections, is making moves, doing the best we can, trying to win the championship or to get the grail, complete the set, whatever. And there's all kinds of different aspects of that. Going back to the previous thing, you complete the goal, you complete the grail. Now what? On to the next thing. Win, lose, draw, we keep moving. We got a couple of comments in the chat here. Like a Hot Cards, thank you for stopping by. Another parallel could be a parallel with fab money and having money set aside to jump on the PC when it comes up. 100% agree with that. That is something I've been talking about, just focusing in on your collection. Because if you want to talk free agent, fab is free agent bidding money. For those of you unfamiliar with what that means, basically, if you have a set dollar amount, and during free agency, when there's a bunch of players available, you can add to your roster. You can bid on these players up to a certain amount based on the money that you have available. Highest bid wins that player. Same concept like he was talking about right here with jumping on that PC card. And I've talked about focus, and I'm going to continue to kind of hit the hammer you over the head, you viewers, with that concept of, just because there's a new release that comes out, just because you're seeing, I don't want to use the term influencer, but let's just say there's a lot of people within the wrestling card hobby that are talking about the same set, the same talent, the same type of card, the same parallel, whatever it is. And you say, well, I need that in my collection to be like them. I need to compete. I need to have what everyone else has. And that, that is going to lead you down if that's what you want to do, go for it. But I think that's going to lead you down a bad road. Like a Hawk Cards, if I could talk right here, what that he's saying about, having that money set aside to jump on that PC item. That is what it's all about, because there's items that come out and people are like, oh, I can't afford it. It costs too much. But yet they're going out and they're buying the latest wax release, or they're buying this gold prism card just because somebody told them it was a good investment, or they're buying, whatever the latest hobby release is that they saw somebody they follow on Instagram flashing because they wanted to be a part of the crowd. And what he's saying right here, focusing on what it is you want and not wasting your time with something that isn't really going to impact your team, bringing that back to fantasy, so to speak. So, like a heart card, shout out once again. Thanks for dropping the comment. Thanks for stopping by. The all-in set, 80.556% complete. That is amazing. And Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but have you seen anybody else out there that has the cards you need for this set? Or is anybody out there have an all-in complete card set? A lot of people have actually talked about, and I think maybe this is where you and some other people got this from. A lot of people have talked about the all-in set being like the modern equivalent of Wrestling All-Stars because it has some major names on it. Some of them are first appearance cards, some of them are not. But it was put together in this set that some people don't call official trading cards, but look at what the sales do for these. I mean, people are paying big money for this. And that's kind of the same thing with what people still to this day say about Wrestling All-Stars. It wasn't an official set. Like, these are not actual rookie cards, like whatever it is. So, Aaron, let me know on that. Maybe, again, that's maybe information we save for the getting you and Caleb on the show to talk about that. Oh, wait, he's got the comment right here for us. Not yet. The only one I need out there that's already the Stephen and Mel, but I'll catch him at a signing. Awesome. Can't wait to see that finished. So, again, just wanted to run through all the different parallels that are between fantasy football and wrestling cards today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will. Hold on. He's got another comment. Everything else I need to get done. Okay, gotcha. Can't wait to see that. Let us know on social media. And again, the closer you get, or if you want to talk about it, we can come on the stream and get you on the show. But I just think that, I'm not saying you need to play fantasy football watching this. Don't get me wrong. You don't even have to be a football fan. But it's just fantasy football, music, wrestling, specifically wrestling cards. Like, those are three of my passions that I do like to talk about a lot. And I think there are a lot of people within the wrestling card hobby that don't want to hear anything about they don't want to hear anything but wrestling cards, brother. It's all we want to hear you talk about. And I understand some of these videos aren't going to be for everybody, and that's okay too. But I like to talk about my passions and share them with others. And when I started, thinking this past weekend with my fantasy teams, I just started thinking all these parallels between the way I collect and the way I play fantasy and how those kind of correlate. And I thought that it would be cool for a lot of wrestling card collectors to jump on. Miami Mark's with us. Thanks for stopping by, even though we're getting ready to end the stream. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like this video, give me a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you've got a comment, you're watching this on the archives, drop a comment below. If you got a question, if you guys want to join the league, if you want to be put on the waiting list for the league next year, just leave a comment below and I'll add you onto that. And again, Mike Summer already spoke about he'd be interested in joining the DraftKings League. If DraftKings is something you're interested in, maybe you already play, let me know in the comments your DraftKings name, or if you're interested and I can get a hold of you, reach out to me on social media, get a hold of me that way. And we can put together a group where we're just playing like $1 games, and we can do it periodically. If people jump in, cool. If not, no big deal. But thank you guys for watching today. Again, if you enjoyed this, if it brought you some value, hit the subscribe button. Give me a like. Check out all the links in the show notes of the ways that you can help show your support. I'm going to still continue to do one of these lives probably every week. So tune in next week and spread the word. Let more people know. Have fun in the chat. I love seeing all you guys in the chat today. And hopefully we can just continue to grow that, maybe do more live streams, get more people involved. So until next time, the most important thing is, for most of you, not fantasy football. Keep collecting. Keep having fun. We'll see you.